Hi, everyone. Just wanted to give you an update. We have quite a long list of registrants. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes before we get started. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Just a quick update of review. On October 10th, the draft policy was released for comment, proposing technical requirements for 3 new categories of products to become eligible for listing on the DLC qualified products list. On the 18th and 20th of October, webinars were held to review those requirements, and a draft was sent out for a 45-day review period. So what we're going to look at today is the final policy release that's the result of that for version 4.3 product categories, which include color tunable products, field adjustable output products, and 3-foot, 8-foot, and 2G11 lamps. I think we do have some first-time participants on the call today. We'll run through the agenda and take a quick review of the policy development process in general. We're going to talk category by category through the color tuning sections, field adjustable, and then the lamp section last. Then we'll look at next steps. And toward the end, my colleague Tim Henning will have a safety certification update. On that note, we do have some additional team members on the call today who will be supporting us. We have Dave Ryan from DNR International. We also have Greg Barker and Axel Pearson with Energy Solutions on the line, so I want to thank them for joining us. My name is Rhonda Lowe. I'm a program manager with Design Lights Consortium. And I just want to thank you for your input along the way and for joining us today. Whether it be new policy or policy revisions, future work for the DLC comes under consideration through the feedback received from the members and stakeholders, usually in response to market trends. The prioritization of that work is then determined through a well-rounded and formal vetting process. Please visit our site on occasion. I don't know if you've seen recently, when you go to designlights.org/work plan, you'll find updated current efforts and a chart that gives you a general idea of what's coming up next and any specific dates you might want to keep track of. In general, DLC works to continuously improve in providing manufacturers and other stakeholders transparency and readiness in regards to the policy workflows. So as product categories come under consideration, preliminary research is performed internally and utilized to obtain feedback from the technical committee. A draft policy is developed from that input, and additional research and outreach is conducted and released back to stakeholders for formal comment, as the 4.3 policy was done here. So subsequently, we have the final policy. This is developed only after taking all feedback into consideration. Your input has really been critical to the process. I just want to thank you again for taking the time to be on the call today. So the first product category that we'll look at is the color tunable products. There are a lot of different approaches to color tuning, both in the product development and in application. There's also a very diverse array of control protocols used, both industry standardized and proprietary controls. And some of these diversities impact the potential performance of color tunable products directly and collectively. Going back to the policy process, this policy came under development really last year. The DLC originally released a draft policy for this category as selectable color tuning. And based on the feedback received, we're reviewing that final policy today as a dynamic color tuning policy. In policy 4.3, color tunable products are limited to tunable white products, whether they be linear or nonlinear, and warm dimming products. So for the purpose of these two subcategories, white light is defined as chromaticity coordinates within the 27-step quadrangles of ANSI C78377. So that's both the basic and extended specifications. In the type definitions of the policy, white tunable is also defined as having an input control which is discrete to color temperature, whether or not a separate control for dimming exists. Version 4.3 also includes dim to warm products, and both have been outlined in accordance with Department of Energy definitions. The primary distinction between the two being that white tunable products integrate controls specific to color temperature changes, where the CCT changes in the dimming may be controlled with a single input on dim to warm products. All color tunable products require following the application process for family grouping. So single products are eligible, but we would have to go through the family grouping application process. For both the standard and the premium applications, the initial qualification is that the product meet all current technical requirements for that level, excluding, of course, performance requirements that characterize the color temperature. Then all of the other product performance requirements from the existing policy will need to be met at all values along the color control signal, so the actual input signal. We want to declare that the white tunable policy does not impose up or lower limits, nor does warm dimming on the color temperature. So the color temperature requirements are more in keeping with the familiar requirements that we have for CCT capabilities based on the product categories that already exist, that product would otherwise fall into. Along the way, there were some comments about the testing requirements and several iterations. The testing requirements for 4.3 are listed here exactly as they appear in the final policy, but we've highlighted the existing requirements in green, the pre-existing requirements in green, and the new requirements are highlighted in yellow. So testing requirements for white tunable products is the same for existing products at the baseline lowest efficacy, with the addition of test reports at the minimum, maximum, and an intermediate point along the color temperature range available. So that's based on the input control for the product. This is a flow chart that might provide a little more insight. And the testing requirements here are organized to represent the actual application process. So if you start with that familiar perspective of identifying the least efficacious product. So where the testing at minimum, maximum, and middle ground of the color temperature range accessible through the control also represents the least efficacious condition. Where this doesn't line up, a written technical rationale for that relationship can be provided. So we're understanding that there's a lot of diversity from product to product in this category. And in the approach to identifying the least efficacious condition, and likely that developer is going to know more about that approach. So we would welcome a written technical rationale for that. So once that and 3 testing points specific to color temperature are complete, we're just looking to meet the existing policy requirements. So that would be with the exception of including the highest consumption. So given that the last item in this flow is also an existing requirement that's more distinct to varying optics, essentially if your process is all yeses here as you move through this chart, you would include 3 LM79 tests. And all no's, of course, would lead to more testing. So depending on the product and the approach to the tests required in terms of how you're aligning with the least efficacious, then the test required could range from a quantity of 3 to a quantity of 11. And one exception to this would be that electrical bent testing is allowed for power quality along the way. There is a reporting requirement for power consumption, which aligns with existing ANSI standard C78 quadrangles. So there's a table included. This table is actually in the policy document. You would utilize that. But I wanted to make sure that it's clear in-house and scaled data are acceptable here. A little bit simpler process is the warm dimming products, where they're going to meet all existing technical requirements simply at the maximum output. So warm dimming products might also be field adjustable. And in cases where products have both performance features, they would need to comply with both sets of requirements. Dim to warm testing is required at the maximum setting available via the controller for clarity. Again, as a subgroup of the color tunable policy, may only be qualified under the family application process. Also coinciding with version 4.3, a new tab highlighting these new fields, such as color tunability, will be listed on the QPL. Within that tab, the type of color tunability will be listed for the qualified feature. For instance, that would be as either white tunable or warm dimming. So while the tunable requirements specifically do not restrict white tunable qualification, the white tunable products would be listed with 2 new fields that display the minimum and maximum color temperature values. So they would be listed along with the product. Warm dimming products will be listed on the QPL at the full output setting. So we move on to field adjustable products. Version 4.3 updates the existing DLC dimming specification to allow products with factory set or field adjustable light output to be listed on the QPL. The intent of this update is to allow manufacturers and distributors to stock fewer SKUs, increase margins, product performance, versatility to lighting designers, flexibility for customers. Version 4.3 updates would allow the color temperature type features to fall under and be addressed by color tuning policy. So where the product has, again, 2 different types of features, anywhere that there's an adjustable color temperature, you would revert back to the color tuning policy and testing requirements. The field adjustable policy defines field adjustable as products where the light output can be adjusted by the manufacturer, distributor, or installer before or during installation. Dimmable products are capable of being adjusted to decrease lumen output and wattage from the default setting, whereas field adjustable products are defined differently by being able to be adjusted to decrease or increase lumen output and wattage from the default settings. So the testing and reporting requirements propose that field adjustable products including dimmable products, be tested at the default setting. That's a new term for SSL policy. The default setting is essentially the setting at which the product emerges from production or manufacturing. Again, single products are eligible to be qualified, but for field adjustable as well, you would need to go through the family group application policy. And once again, as products have two different features, they might be capable of field adjustable and color tuning, and they would be evaluated under both product testing and reporting requirements. And again, the default setting refers to the lumen output the product is set to as it emerges from production. The family requirements and bracketing are the same as what you have been accustomed to, but are based on this default setting definition. Same for the LM79. So it's also required to identify and provide an LM79 for the product with the highest wattage product setting combination. In terms of listing, the product performance characteristics from the LM79 test would be listed for parent products in the usual way. The maximum wattage from the LM79 test conducted at the most consumptive setting would be listed under a new field for maximum test wattage. This product is the one that would be listed as the parent then. So both the parent and the child would be listed with the maximum rated wattage under a new field for maximum wattage. The minimum and maximum outputs would be listed under new fields as an output range. And again, just like with color tunability, a new field adjustability field will be added to the QPL, followed by the specific subcategory of that feature, which in this case, of course, is lumen output, field adjustable lumen output. I want to stop real quick for any questions before we move on to lamps. We could open that up for a moment. So we'll move on to 3-foot, 8-foot, and 2G11 replacement lamps. A lot of varied form factors of lamps are requested frequently by both members and industry stakeholders to be considered for eligibility on the DLC QPL. Here the DLC has proposed qualification metrics for 3 distinct form factors. For final version 4.3, there's a 3-foot, 8-foot, and 2G11 base lamps. In general, the performance criteria and testing requirements proposed for the 3-foot and 8-foot TLEDs and 2G11 base lamps aligned with existing replacement lamp policies under the linear replacement lamps category and the 4-pin replacement lamps category, respectively. The product performance minimums for the 4-pin lamps were in alignment in general with 2-foot T8 requirements. This table might help convey the intended relationships between the 2G11 and the TLED requirements of the current draft. In some ways, they're more alike. And then because we consider the 2G11 base lamp specifically intended for troffers, most often 2x2 retrofit, troffer retrofits, there are some differences. Also, both TLEDs are eligible as type A, B, C, or dual operating UL types. Types A, B, and AB testing require 2 lamps in the reference fixture. I think this is in keeping with former policy. Type C testing may utilize 1 to 3 lamps, where the quantity is determined by the quantity intended to be used with the external driver of that particular system. I think that's also been consistent. The testing requirements regarding reference housing and ballasts are clearly outlined in each section of the policy for each lamp. In keeping with former policy, the eligibility for each of the lamps requires a standard defined base that's outlined, a standard nominal length, We've provided the 2-lamp strip fixture for in situ testing, and the reference ballast information. The same basic requirements apply for 8-foot lamps. However, there are dimensional constraints for gonophotometers in regards to testing the 8-foot lamps. So in accommodating that, an alternative computational method was proposed in the policy, where a 4-foot lamp, we've defined in what way it is identical or serves as a representative lamp for the 8-foot lamp, and a testing methodology to extrapolate the candela information from the 4-foot over to the 8-foot. And for clarity, I want to point out that the representative 4-foot lamp, in addition to its physical characteristics, must be a sellable product. So that's a product that's marketed and produced by the same manufacturer as the 8-foot lamp. It would have a distinct ordering number, for instance. It is also required that in some way the calculated candela within the workflow be highlighted or called out as distinct from the testing equipment candela, and that you provide a photograph and structural information and a photograph of both the lamps side by side. In regards to the bare lamp testing, here are the 3-foot and 8-foot proposed additions. In this table illustrate alignment with existing policy where the performance data points remain consistent with the exception of initial light output. The in situ information for the 3-foot and the 8-foot replacement lamps is essentially the same as for the 2-foot and 4-foot standard T8 lamps, with the exception of a minimum initial luminaire light output. So the compatibility tests in general are based on Energy Star requirements for the sake of a frequency testing. And it might be interesting to point out here, ultimately, one thing that's different is the 2G11 base lamps. The nominal length has been defined as equal or greater to 20 inches. And that also allows us to open this base lamp up to UL types A, B, C, and dual mode also. So here you might see that the in situ criteria looks more in alignment with the other replacement lamp categories in terms of progression from one to the next. And at the same time, the initial light output of the lamp criteria has been adjusted more so to the intended retrofit type. Do we want to open up for questions? Axel, if you could unmute everyone and give them an opportunity to ask questions. Okay. We may be having some trouble with the interface. I would imagine that some people are trying to ask questions and we're not hearing them. If that's the case, please use the interface panel for the webinar. You can submit questions directly in the panel. Okay, so I'm seeing some written questions and responses. I'm still not hearing any audible questions. Again, feel free to continue to add questions to the panel. And then also we'll provide you a way to circle back with us after the webinar as well. The next steps include some upcoming drafts. Horticultural lighting you might be aware of. We're working on DC PoE luminaires as well, and then that network lighting controls policy. You will see drafts for those coming up in April. You might be aware that there's some progress being made towards including Flickr specifications. That has been moved to other work that it coincides better with, I think, in 2018, but you'll still be seeing that. And just a note to make sure that everybody's aware that on Monday, March 26th, version 4.3 that we're looking at today officially becomes effective. And at that point, there's a new application form. You want to make sure that you have that new form. You will not be able to submit an application with the previous form at that time. This is my email address. You could submit questions following this webinar in regards to version 4.3 here. You can also submit more general questions to info@designlights.org. At this time, I'm going to pass over control to my colleague, Tim Henning, so he can talk you through some new safety certification requirements.
How's it going? Can everybody, or Rhonda, can you hear me okay?
I do.
Okay, just want to make sure it's going through. Thank you, thanks. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Tim Henning. I'm a solid state lighting program manager with the DLC. Over the past few months, we've been working on a process streamlining effort where we've been looking at a lot of our policies and procedures and see what we can do to streamline them moving forward. A couple areas that we're looking to make some more immediate changes have to do with the self-certification statement as well as the safety policy. So I'm going to quickly run through some of the changes that we're making there that'll be effective next week. A lot of you probably saw the email come out a little earlier today highlighting some of the changes in a little more detail. But again, I'll kind of step through each of those a little further here. So with the self-certification statement, basically looking through the details of our process, we saw that there were a number of incorrect self-certification statements being submitted, which ultimately resulted in a lot of the applications being rejected. Obviously, this is a pretty straightforward document that's printed off, signed, scanned in, and submitted as part of the application process, and not something that we ever intended to hold up the process in any way from moving forward. In an effort to kind of streamline that whole process, we've now migrated that to a digital form, or what we're calling a click wrap agreement. So any of you with cell phones, anytime you have to update your software, typically you go in and interface with a click wrap agreement where you'll read through the legal wording and then click I agree. So very similar process that we're going to have here. So the new process that you're going to see is as you go through and upload all your documentation on the application interface, you'll no longer see the place where you upload the self-certification statement. What you'll now do is you'll simply click on submit and a window will appear. And within that window, it's going to contain the original self-certification statement wording along with some links where you can get some additional information. And in addition to that, we've included the logo guidelines compliance statement, the surveillance testing compliance statement, as well as a revised safety certification compliance statement. So you'll find all that information in there. Once you're done reading through the document in detail, you'll basically click I agree. You'll digitally type your name in as a signature, and then you'll put your title in there as well and click submit. This is the final step that'll be required prior to submitting that application. And in the event that some of the organizations have a dedicated person who submits the applications but may or may not be authorized to sign off on this statement, what we recommend in those cases is the signing authority that would ultimately sign off on this click wrap agreement, create an account with the DLC. once all the information's uploaded on the application page, they would simply log in, go to that application, and click submit, and then that would formally file the application for review. Looking at the timeline for release, again, there was an email that went out a little earlier this afternoon that contains a lot of the details, as well as a copy of the statement that you can look at. And beginning Monday of next week, all applications moving forward will be required to submit this. Rhonda, it's not allowing me to, oh, there we go. All right, so looking at the revised safety policy. So as many of you are aware, the existing safety policy that we had, basically every single product that you were looking to have listed on the QPL would have to be fully traceable back to the safety documentation submitted. And we were seeing roughly, on applications where we had issues, roughly 20% of those were due to a safety related issue. So the documentation didn't provide that 100% traceability. There'd be back and forth between the manufacturer, the submitter, the DLC, as well as the lab. So what we've done is we've actually gone through and revised that policy to make it align better with how the large safety organizations are issuing the documentation. So as it stands right now with the revised policy, what we're going to be requiring is for standard submittals, so these are going to be your single product, family grouping, and product update applications. What we'll be looking for is the OEM certificate of compliance, as well as that digitally signed verification statement. So I just kind of ran through that on the ClickWrap agreement. So once you upload that compliance statement, that's all you'll need from the safety side of things. For private label applications, again, we're going to require that OEM certificate of compliance. But in addition to that, and consistent with our current policy, we'll still be looking for the private label certificate of compliance. So that's going to have the private labeler's name, file number on that document, as well as the multiple listing correlation sheet. So this is going to show that traceability from the OEM product that was originally submitted on the QPL to the private labeler's model numbers, and this would be issued directly by the safety organization as well. And again, that digitally signed verification statement. Per our current process, that traceability was done on the front end. So a lot of you, once you submitted the information, you'd spend a lot of time with the reviewer showing that direct traceability. We're now going to do that on the back end. So we'll be looking to verify that the appropriate documents were submitted, that the agreement was signed. And then on the back end, through verification testing, when a product is selected, we'll basically send that off to the safety organization to, in fact, verify that that product was, in fact, safety certified. So the timeline for release, again, this was released with the version 4.3 last week and was captured in the technical requirements section. And beginning Monday of next week, all applications moving forward will be required to submit this documentation. So Rhonda, that's all I have from my side on the updated ClickWrap and safety policy. I didn't know if there's anything else you have to wrap up with.
No, Tim, but thanks. Maybe we should try one more time, if we could, Axel, to see if we could open up for questions.
Je l'ai lu, sorry.
That's weird. Why would he bring up product now?
That's what I'm saying.
Click on the product in the very
That's
first
what I'm
meeting.
saying. Like, why? Like, no.
I don't like him already. I don't trust him or like him already.
If he thought that way, then that was a big mistake for him.
Yeah, why did you, when you looked at our product line, why did you take the
know
job?
what I told? That's what I told to you. You know.
Okay, it doesn't sound like we're able to take direct questions from specific attendees singularly. Again, feel free to email back to arlo@designlights.org or info@ designlights.org, and maybe we'll keep also the panel open for just a couple of minutes if people are still trying to submit written questions. Thanks everyone for attending today. We really appreciate your time and hope to see you soon. Thanks.